Good morning and welcome to Puerto Rican Culture Agenda meeting. This is the first one this year at Roberto Clemente High School, so we want to welcome you back. I am Édouard Morales, the proud principal of Roberto Clemente High School. I am a native of Humboldt Park, born and raised in this area, so it is a privilege to come home. I've been the principal here 2 years, and I served as an assistant principal here for 1 year, so this is my 3rd year here. This is a family high school, and most importantly, this is the 50th year of this school, so definitely. Is Marvin here?
He is not.
He is not. So I want to thank Marvin. I seen the write-up in La Voz for Clemente, so I really appreciate that for talking about some of the things that we're doing. So we get a chance, look through the newspaper. It talks about some of our programs, where we are, and as we move from good to great. Yesterday we hosted a group called Leadership Greater Chicago. Dr. Janice Jackson was in the building. This is the group that gives the schools the scholarship. So hopefully they'll be coming knocking on our door soon. So we had a great program. We showed some of the CEOs and some of the leaders of companies around our school. We had a student panel. I sat on the panel with Dr. Janice Jackson. We just talked about the needs of Clemente students and how they come from all walks of life. They all have different pathways to success after high school, and we just want to give them that opportunity to be successful for whatever they choose to do. We had students from JROTC, our CTE culinary, broadcasting, and allied health programs, and we had featured some of our students from our international baccalaureate, MYP, DP, and CP programs. So we have something for all. We are a neighborhood high school, however, there are many tracks. And most importantly, I'm going to say this, I say this for last. Last Thursday, we were approved to give college credit in our culinary arts program and broadcasting. So 2 of my instructors who are Clemente graduates will be able to teach those classes, and students will be given college credit if they complete it. So again, thank you. Ladies, if you need the facilities, you can walk right out of this door down the hall. You'll see them halfway. Gentlemen, your facilities are on the other side. Again, welcome. Anything you need, let me know. I'll be here.
We have a really tight agenda today with introductions. I am Natasha Brown. I am the co-chair of the Puerto Rican Agenda, and in my day job, I'm a director at the Puerto Rican Cultural Center.
I'm also a co-chair, and my day job is DHS investigator, so watch out. So if we can introduce each other, yourselves, as we go around, so we kind of get an idea of who's in the house, and we'll start. Great.
Hi everyone, my name is Xiomara Rodriguez. My day job is the Director of Digital Presence at the Puerto Rican Cultural Center. I'm also the Editor-in-Chief of La Voz del Paseo Boricua. So yeah, please make sure you read it and share it with everybody that you know. We're online too.
Hi, my name is Clemente Figueroa. I'm an assistant of Juan Calderon
My name is Taina Toro. I'm a program coordinator for the Humboldt Park Youth Employment and Empowerment Center.
Hi, my name is Carla Acevedo Yates, and I work as a curator at the Archipelagic Temporary.
I'm Jan Sussler. I'm one of the lawyers at the People's Law.
I'm Victor Roldán, and I work in the family.
I'm Ada Lopez. I'm a member of the American Civil Liberties Union Board, and I'm co-chair of the Education Committee.
Hi, my name is Yarita Rodriguez, and I'm a student at UIC.
Hi, I'm Miranda Fernandez. I'm a social worker, and I am part of the Network for Graduate Department.
Buenos días. My name is Fernanda Figueroa. I'm co-chair with Christian with the Arts and Culture Committee. I am an artist, and I the director of
and everything else over the summer.
Hello, my name is Sonia Baez Hernandez. I'm an artist and I'm in the climate change community.
Efrain Elias, SEIU Local 1, Secretary Treasurer. It's a labor union. It's also called the Janitors Union. Thank you.
If you can stand up, because people are in the back, they can hear you. And also old people are losing our hearing, okay?
Buenos días, ¿me escuchan allá atrás? Sí. So we good. Noel Sanchez. I'm a lobbyist with SEIU Local 1 and organizer. I'm part of the Puerto Rican agenda too. And I drive Jose sometimes around.
I'm Vilma Colom. Jose has always driven me crazy, and I've been driving him crazy. I'm the Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Office under the President, Tony Predwinkle. I'm also the President of the Northern Illinois chapter of NACOPRO. We're having a fundraiser March 30th. We're going to share information with you. And I also have cards here if you know people that are looking for jobs. Okay?
I'm Hilda Frontani. I'm the Chair Emeritus of Rincon Family Services, and with the Puerto Rican agenda, I'm on the Health Committee. And every year, with the Puerto Rican agenda and the Puerto Rican Cultural Center, I coordinate bringing a priest all the way from Puerto Rico so that we can celebrate the Misa Jibaraya.
Good morning, buenos dias. I'm Joy Arrete, Bickerdike Development Corporation, and new co-chair of
the
Good morning, Renee Steve, Community Partnerships and Grants Lead at Argonne National Laboratory. Good morning, hello everybody. Georgia Porter, I'm with Argonne National Laboratory as well, Community Engagement Strategist, and I've been working with the PRA on the climate.
I'm Andres Santiago. I'm the owner and founder of Abuelitos Construction since 1998. I will be a future attorney at law.
Max Berglamer. I'm a professor at UIC in climate and atmospheric sciences, and I am on the PRA Climate Committee.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Wilmarie Medina Cortez, and I am on the PRA Climate Committee as well.
Buenos dias, good morning. I'm Wilfredo Santana, a retired high school teacher with Chicago Public Schools, and I'm also on the Climate Committee.
Hi, Jane Nicholson, member of the PRA Climate Committee, a consultant and grant writer for PRCC, and a restorative justice trainer. Good morning.
Ralph Cintrón, at UIC, Climate Committee.
Good morning, I'm Anissa Camacho. I'm a graduate student at UIC. I'm also an operations specialist at Mariano's, and I'm also part of the Climate Committee.
Hi, hola, my name is Axel Ortiz. I'm a proudly Rio Grandeño, and I'm a graduate student at UAGM of Puerto Rico, and I'm part of the Climate Committee.
Marta Cerda, a CEO of ASI and co-chair of the Health Committee. Please join the Health Committee.
Good morning, everybody. Emmanuel Davila, co-chair of the Economic Development Committee at the Puerto Rican Agenda, and in my day job, I serve as Director of Business Growth Services with the Southland Development Authority, covering the south suburbs of Chicago.
Good morning, Frida Sanchez, UIC doctoral student.
Good morning, my name is James Sharp. I'm also a UIC graduate student working with Professor Cintrón.
Good morning, Eduardo Arocho, Paseo Boricua Tour Company.
Good morning, my name is Amar Marno, and I'm an engineering student at Overripe.
Good morning, my name is Noah Bravo. I'm an engineering student at Grover White College.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Angel Flores. I'm a computer science pre-engineer at Wright College.
Morning, everyone. My first meeting. Doris Espiritu, Senior Advisor to the Provost of the City Colleges of Chicago and Dean of Engineering.
Hey, good morning. Gabe Estel. I am the Vice President of Student and Academic Affairs at Wilbur Wright College. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Hello, Sean from Wright College as well. I'm the Associate Dean of Career Programs. Real quick, we've got a solar panel installation renewable energy course coming up in partnership with the IBEW. It's going to be free. High school seniors are also welcome to apply, so I'll have some applications. And Sandra will send an email to the group because I don't think I brought enough. But thank you.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Lavenda. I'm a science teacher at Coast High School. First meeting. Glad to be here.
Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Dr. Melissa Lewis, principal of Dr. Pedro Alviso Campos High School.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Jose. Education and housing committees.
Morning, David Potesh, President of Wright College.
Rob Kodamurthy, I'm a senior scientist at Argonne National Lab.
Seth Severns, I do STEM education outreach for the University of Chicago in various high schools.
Hi, good morning. Raisa Licea, Lucha.
Buenos días, Sandra Payan Cataño. I'm the Community Relations Strategist for Wilbur Wright College, and I'm part of the Education Committee.
Buenos días, Kimberly Figueroa Calderón from Colectivo ILE in Puerto Rico. We are an anti-racist and decolonial organization.
Hola, buen día. Mayra Díaz Torres from Caguas, Puerto Rico. Administrative Director of Colectivo ILE.
Good morning, Kevin Garcia, Director of Public Health Initiatives at the Puerto Rican Cultural Center, and I'm part of the Health Committee.
Samuel Santana, co-director of the PPI department at the Puerto Rican Cultural Center.
Anthony De Jesus, part of the Puerto Rican Cultural Center.
I'm David Bleaton. I'm a professor of legal thought and legal history.
You can't hear.
I'm David Bleaton. I'm a professor of legal thought and legal history at the University of Chicago.
Erika Ortiz Cebeña, here because I'm Marisol's comadre.
Important job, guys.
Hi, everyone. Dr. Marisol Morales. I serve as the Executive Director of Carnegie Elective Classifications with the American Council on Education, and then, and I'm also co-chair of the Education Committee.
Hello, everyone. Dr. Amilcar Ramirez, proud alum of Roberto Clemente High School. And I serve as the Dean of Instruction at Daly College, one of the city colleges of Chicago. And co-founder of En Las Tablas Performing Arts.
Yeah. Maritza Nazario, Executive Director of En Las Tablas Performing Arts.
Hi, I'm Emma Wolf. I am an Associate Board Member at Growing Home. And yeah, Manny's fiance.
I'm the HR Director for the Puerto Rican Cultural Center.
Jonathan Mejias, Behavior Specialist and Disruptive Practices Coach, CPA.
Good morning, my name is Matt Wilson. I'm the Associate Director for Economic and Workforce Development at the Great Cities Institute at UIC.
Hi everyone, I am Natalie Love and I am an ecologist and scientist at UIC.
Hi, my name is Aram Jo. I'm a postdoc at UIC.
I can't hear you.
My name is Aram Jo. I'm a postdoc at UIC.
Hi, my name is Cheng Ho Lee. I'm a climate scientist at UIC.
Luis Martinez, architect for City Colleges in the Spirit.
Anybody we missed?
All that corner over there.
Morning, I'm Justice Tobar, working for Justice Reyes, who's running for the Supreme Court.
Hilda? Hilda already answered. Everybody else?
I'm David Hernandez, Chairman of the Board of Puerto Rican Arts and Culture.
Rolando Negro, Natasha Rami here.
Tatiana Martinez, hija de Luis Martinez.
Welcome, everybody. As you can tell, for those that are kind of new to the agenda, we have a lot of committees that basically help run this great organization. So feel free, if there's something that interests you, a little bit, a lot, please join housing, climate, education, health, Culture.
Arts and culture.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
I'm not used to public speaking, so forgive me. I'm usually the quiet one in the back. But I'm going to try. I've been working on my Spanish, so I'm going to try a Spanish introduction. Buenos días, miembros de la agenda puertorriqueña. Mi nombre es Efraín Elías y soy uno de los oficiales de SEIU Local 1. El primer boricua en un puesto como este. De ser hijo de padres puertorriqueños de Cagua. Ahora, ahí se terminó el español. Voy a Efraín Elias, from SEIU Local 1. I'm the Secretary Treasurer, the second highest position of that local and first Puerto Rican to hold that position. I'm here to talk to you guys today about downtown and something that we're launching called Reimagine Chicago. For us at SEIU, it's very important. Downtown is an economic engine with over 250,000 residents and businesses down there. And we, the commercial office space is in limbo right now, and we're trying to make sure that we have a seat at the table and this community, right, which I'm very proud of, because I got a lot of workers that work downtown that live and come and reinvest in this community. And what we're trying to do is make sure that Reimagine Chicago, we all have a seat at the table and make sure that this next iteration of downtown is vibrant, is alive, is safe, has good paying union jobs, has good paying jobs, so that the folks that work down there and commute down there and live down there could come back to communities like Humboldt Park and reinvest and be able to provide and pay it forward. I have thousands of members. I have 50,000 members. I got 22,000 janitors, including inside here Roberto Clemente, in residential buildings and commercial buildings. And our commercial janitor, and I've been very, very, very unapologetic of making sure that the janitors are Latinos, are African American, because we got to make sure that we have access to good union jobs. I'm in a position to provide those. That's exactly what I'm doing, using my platform to make sure that they're good paying jobs. Thank you to the Brickerdites, to the Luchas, to the Hispanic housing, for not only creating affordable housing, but creating good quality jobs in the community. So what we're doing is we want to put public attention to downtown and get elected officials, get people, stakeholders from this community, and business owners to reimagine Chicago. We're going to have a demonstration on the 13th to kind of amplify the commercial contract janitors, their contract, to make sure that they have a successful contract and pivot and use that to have a seat at the table to say, this is what we need and want downtown to look like so that we could get back to our vibrant communities. Thank you very much, Efraín Elias. Thank you.
With what he's talking about, basically the self-sufficiency, the housing, we get these people that get good jobs, good pay, but they come back to their neighborhood and they can't afford it. So we want that kind of collaboration with housing as well. So
I don't bring too many flyers, but if you go into SEIU on Facebook, this information is there. If you can share this information, we're going to appreciate it. Thank you.
Let me just add one other thing. A lot of our programs here in the Puerto Rican agenda also work with other programs like Build, Wright College, all of these programs that are doing trades, making sure that you're connecting with SEIU so that we're placing these youth that are graduating from these programs into good paying jobs. So I just want to point that out so that we're making connections and networking while we're here.
And that's part of what
Can I say something? The cards that I send you, we help SEIU get jobs. We're desperate. We need laborers, window washers, janitors. So the card I gave you, you could have people scan it and apply for a job.
So we have a very, very special recognition today. I want to say that David, come here a second. I'm always trying to help.
Don't cry.
But that's part of who he is. David has been an amazing friend of this community. David is the president of Wright Junior College and Community College. And David, ever since he became the president, he's been involved in everything that we have done. In every event that we celebrate, David dice presente. And so he's going to leave us, and we're obviously saddened, but obviously he's been around, and I think he deserves a little break from us. But we did want to honor him. We had some little difficult. We wanted to do a little thing about him, but we can't because I don't like technology, but this is gets worse all the time. Okay, good. All right, so you can get an idea. He has brought this college to a new level, and we hope that the person that substitutes him will be someone who's deeply engaged and involved in our work. And we have several candidates already, so I just want to let everybody know. But for us, this is an important moment, and I wanted, David, for you to say something to the members of the agenda. We brought him a beautiful cake, which we hope all of you see, and you know, we obviously wanted to honor him.
Thank you, Dr. Lopez. Mi español no es bueno, unas pocas palabras en español, about English. And that's, mis colegas, we got a lot of people from right here, but in particular, Yesha, where are you? And Sandra, mis mezclas en español. So gracias. When I started 11 years ago, it's been a long time, city colleges had a different chancellor, and things were not so great with the community. I was responsible for implementing some decisions that were not particularly helpful for the Humboldt Park community. Members told me that it was not helpful, justifiably so, and we worked through it. And I learned not only from that experience, but also from you, Dr. Lopez, but also from many of you, about the vibrancy, the dynamicism, the community and the strength of it. I'm a historian, that's my training, and I have a very, very passionate belief in democracy with a small d, where people come together on a regular basis, talk things through, and make collective decisions. And over the years, you have, despite the early problems, have consistently welcomed me, welcomed my colleagues, been candid, shared about ways in which we can work together, shared ways in which we can do more. Under Chancellor Salgado's leadership, we've been able to do significantly more, and I am just extraordinarily grateful and thankful. And one of the things that I don't think is, you have every right and expectation to expect the college to be part of the community. And what I would say in terms of this is I have learned so much from all of you. The values, the strength of this community, but also democracy, small d, leadership, in many ways, history. You do the Koran roll, too. I do not know what is happening for me next. I do know 11 years of writing for long enough, and I do very much hope to stay in touch, and I'm just very, very thankful. Thank you. Thank you.
So we just, in David's departure, we'd like you to see the faces of some of those colleagues that will undertake some of the work that we do with the agenda. So, if we could have our folks stand up.
Yeah, we got all the folks.
Thank you.
David, I wanted to personally thank you because when I first started at the PRCC, it was after Hurricane Maria, and we registered 20 students, and we brought them in, and you helped them acclimate into Wright College. So thank you for always being a front of the Puerto Rican community.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to say that he immediately knew that I was obviously really enthused about history, and the first gift he gave me was a history of Brooklyn, of cabbage and peas, right? Thank you. About urban agriculture, yes. So it's how Brooklyn really provided the food for the city of New York. It was an agricultural area. So thank you, David, and we're gonna enjoy the cake and thank all of you, but thank you for your leadership, your kindness, your compassion, and for me, your solidarity.
So now we have Climate Committee, Professor Cintrón.
Thank you so very much. This is a large turnout, and I really appreciate everyone coming to this particular meeting. We have been working, this is the Crocus community, the Crocus group of scientists. There are about, I would say, 119 scientists that are part of this effort. You remember a few years ago, we were visited by Rao Cotamarchi?
Yes.
Where is Rao?
Where is Rao?
There he is.
There he is.
I hope I pronounced the name correctly.
That's fine.
Christina Negri, George Crabtree, remember George?
Yes.
Yes.
And Robin Granger. All of these folks came. We spoke down at the auditorium. And they were putting together a very large, significant grant. And they were wondering, asking if the Puerto Rican Agenda might be interested in joining. Eventually the grant, we won the grant. It's about a $25 million grant over 5 years of time. We are in the second year of the grant. And so this is kind of a milestone because some of the early data is now beginning to surface, and we're beginning to create some stories, let's say, some narratives around what that information might mean. So today we have two parts that we want to present. Rao is going to present the first part. Crocus does not get involved in the, specifically with the island of Puerto Rico. It's specifically involved with Humboldt Park. But since everybody in Humboldt Park wants to hear something about Puerto Rico, we have managed to corral them into our efforts. And it turns out that Rao, who is the leading climate modeler, I believe, at Argonne National Laboratory, which is one of the most significant research laboratories in the world, quite frankly. But Rao has been doing this kind of work, so he's going to share some of the newest information that he has. And then we're going to follow that up with a specific focus on Humboldt Park. And I think, broadly, what I want to say is that our goal is to find ways by which to gather information, start to make sense of it, and then put it out in front of the Puerto Rican Agenda, other groups around Humboldt Park, and see if we can arrive at some decisions in terms of going forward. So the grant includes information from Chatham on the south side, includes information from West Woodlawn, and at some point we're going to have a deeper analysis of how urban environments, a city, affects the future of climate change, and by the same token how climate change will be affecting the city. So feel honored, quite frankly. This is some of the first information that you'll be seeing about local areas. This work is only going on in a few places in the city, and Humboldt Park is one of them. So, Rao, it's all yours.
Thank you.
To help me out with your computers, my computer doesn't work. So,
It's an honor to be back here. Last time I was here was with George Crabtree, and I really miss him. He kind of showed us around his community with Ralph, and it was amazing interaction here. I came 2 or 3 times at the time, and I think I gave a couple of talks. One was in the Puerto Rican community hall, where Dr. Lopez told Puerto Rican coffee, Puerto Rican table, Puerto Rican this. It was all Puerto Rican for me for the first time I came, and it was pretty exciting. So, in the years from there to now, there are some things that happened within the laboratory that actually I'm kind of going to share here. I'm not particularly going to talk about focus because the next talk will be more focus. I'm going to be talking about global climate change, why we should worry about it, and what is happening in Puerto Rico and what we can expect to happen in the future. So what is going on with climate change? Why are we worried about climate change? This one shows carbon dioxide, which is one of the primary, what we call a greenhouse gas. Why is the earth warming right now? Because we are increasing the amount of carbon dioxide. This shows up to 800,000 years in history. So if you look at it, we can trace that because we can measure carbon dioxide in ice cores, trees, and all that kind of stuff, and sediments under the ocean. So you can see that the carbon dioxide has been fluctuating between 200, 180 to 300 ppm. For the last year, around here, we start going like crazy. This has been now over 420 ppm. So actually the concentration is now higher than this. This figure is probably 2 years old. And it's never been this high in about 20 million years. And it has never grown at the rate we are showing here ever in history, as far as we can understand. So this is an unprecedented event in Earth's history, at least for the last 20, 30 million years. So it happened long ago, and the dinosaurs got killed at that time. So I'm not talking about ages ago when dinosaurs were stalking on the Earth 300 million years ago. We are talking about recent climate history. The next slide. So if you look from 1850, which is we consider this as the industrial period when we started using coal and then we started using various greenhouse gases to run our industries. So what you see is that for the last, as the temperature is increasing, right now it is about 1.25 degrees centigrade. It's about 3 degrees Fahrenheit increase over the historical period. If you go back to 1850 to 1900, compared to that, we are now warmer by about 3 degrees Fahrenheit globally, average. So that's a huge increase. We are expecting it to go even higher. So how do we, so I'm a climate modeler. So how do we, people like us, kind of predict what is going to happen to climate in 100 years from now, 50 years from now? Is this some kind of magic? So we actually understand the physics of the Earth system. We develop models for that, and we try to predict what is happening. So when you do that, we can run those models with various things. I can put a volcano in it. I can take it off. Pinatubo, for example, was a huge volcano in the 1990s, and it actually cooled the Earth down by about 5 degrees at that time. So we can put volcanoes and we can remove them. We can do various forces, the sun, power of the sun changing. And if you do all the natural stuff, this is the one you get, this bottom one. That's the temperature we should be seeing right now in this period of we are living up to 2020 and beyond, up to 2100. But if I include human activities, like the carbon dioxide I showed here, greenhouse gases, you see the increase in temperature. So it's kind of a proof for people like me who understand, who are working with the physics of the models, that this is the perturbation that is actually increasing our temperatures. So we know that the greenhouse gases we are increasing actually are contributing to this change in temperature we are seeing. So next slide. So why should we be worried? Right now I told you we are at 1.25 degrees centigrade, 1.25 about. So let's say we reach 1.5, 2 degrees centigrade. This shows at 1.5 degrees centigrade, and what would happen if you reach 2 degrees centigrade. So this is a way of telling what would happen as climate changes and we cross some thresholds. These are not thresholds like you cross 1.5 degrees tomorrow, suddenly you see this. This is gradually happening. This is just a way of representing that these are the thresholds you don't want to cross at 1.5 and then 2 degrees. Those are, in a way it is a political thing because people need to understand what is happening. If you tell greenhouse gas scenarios, and I show you 100 plots and showing what would happen and all that. A lot of people kind of blank out after five minutes of that. So this is easier to understand that we are at 1.5 degrees centigrade change right now. What would happen if you get to 1.5? What would happen to 2 degrees? So in a way, it is showing you that there could be ice-free summers every 10 years in the Arctic, if you cross those thresholds. There will be declining ocean productivity and 170% increase in flood risk. So there's the intensity of the rainfall. Essentially what we are doing is we are adding a lot of energy to the system, and everything starts jumping around. And some of the things you see is that you see huge floods in some locations. And again, the thing that is of interest to us is that 410 million urban residents will be exposed to severe drought by 2100. So this is not talking about US in general, we're talking around the world. So those are the kinds of major impacts we will see as we cross some of this threshold. So we are trying to do is reach a point where we are not doing that, where we don't cross those thresholds. So what can we do to act to prevent this climate change happening? One is you can so-called mitigate. Mitigation means that we are trying to reduce the amount of carbon, greenhouse gases we are emitting into the atmosphere. So one of the things that we do, a lot of people can relate to the transportation sector, where there is a huge amount of EVs, right? How many people are buying an electric car has become like a threshold of whether you're a green or not. But what you see is that the transportation sector is only 17% of the greenhouse gases emitted. So all of us could start driving Elon Musk car tomorrow, he will be rich, but he'll only be doing 17% of the problem. So it's misdirected in a sense. There are lots of other things going on. Buildings, we all live in buildings. And those emit about 8% of the carbon for heating, for cooling, the various materials used in the building. That's about 8%. So that's a major significant thing that most of us can deal with in some ways and actually make ourselves lives better, right? When we fix that problem. Industry, that's the hardest thing here. Industry means cement, paper, and all those things. They emit huge amounts of carbon. Can you make steel without using coal or gas is a challenge, right? I mean, you can make steel using an electric furnace. People are trying that, but it is not there yet. And you're looking at power sector. Almost power everywhere in the world is coming from coal. The coal power plants, even in Asia and India, for example, China and India, most of the power comes from coal. Here we are kind of converting. Actually, Illinois is very good because we have a lot of nuclear power. And this is one of the most greener states in terms of power production because of nuclear power. And there is a lot of wind energy going on around here. So there's some transition going on, but we still depend a lot on natural gas. So whenever there is the so-called peaker plants, you probably don't notice them. They are on street corners in several places, and they do run on natural gas and produce power whenever there is excess demand, and they do emit a lot of stuff, a lot of pollutants into the air, and also carbon dioxide, which you don't see. Carbon dioxide is not a pollutant that we measure on a regular way in an urban area because it doesn't smell. It does not cause an immediate problem in terms of asthma and things like that ozone particles cause. So nobody bothers about that in terms of health. And then agricultural and land use. Basically converting, let's say, you have a huge amount of forests, you cut them out and start growing agriculture. So those kinds of things are about 17%. Animals, farm animals, those all contribute 17%. So we need to attack all of them, not just one of them, to reach a point what we call net zero. Net zero is no more greenhouse gas emissions. So there is a lot of effort going on. So a lot of countries have signed on to paperwork saying that they will reach net zero by 2030, 2050, and 2070. If you see around you, right now, will US reach a net zero by 2030? You must be dreaming if you do it. By 2050, that's also doubtful. So this is a great thing to think about and plan and push towards, but will we get there? By the time we need to do it, so that if we don't cross the 1.5 and 2 degrees centigrade, it looks kind of doubtful right now. But we should be trying. We should be trying. We need it. The next slide. The second thing you can do is adapt. This is where I spend a lot of my time. So you know the climate is changing. I can kind of forecast where the risk is going to increase. Well, for example, Puerto Rico, how many hurricanes will be there? Will the number of hurricanes increase and the strength of the hurricanes increase in the future? If they are increasing, will they cause flood? If they cause flood, how large of an area will be affected? Can I estimate those risks within some uncertainty range so you can start planning about how I adapt to these changes? So we are working a lot on trying to do this really local neighborhood scale climate projections with uncertainty to advise infrastructure, critical infrastructure, communities on how they can probably think about adapting. But it may not be feasible everywhere. For example, if you are in New York City and you want to prevent something like a storm that happened a few years ago and flooding all your basements, it will be hundreds of billions of dollars to build a wall around the New York City, right? It's just not feasible. And agriculture, right? We are one of the biggest agricultural regions in the world. If the agriculture shifts north from here, there is nothing you can do to adapt to that. I mean, it's just gone. I mean, it's gone to a different place. So there are risks in adaptation. There are some things you can adapt to, some things you cannot adapt. And so that's there. This is a medium-term plan. As we reduce the carbon, this is the thing we need to do so we can survive for the next 70, 80 years. That's the philosophy of adaptation. The next slide, please. So the other thing you can do, this is a crazy ideas domain, is somehow we can engineer our climate. This is a very, people who have a lot of money, like Bill Gates, think they can engineer the climate. So the idea here is that build something that will absorb carbon from the atmosphere. So, as I said, there is 420 ppm in CO2 in the atmosphere, carbon dioxide. But that is still parts per million. So it's very, very dilute. To take carbon out of the atmosphere and sequester it into ground takes a lot of energy. So these kinds of things are being built, and Bill Gates is a big investor in that. So they are trying to sequester carbon. Carbon dioxide removal is one of the plans that is being proposed. Trees are proposed as one of them. So these are not permanent solutions. Again, if you plant trees, they die after a while, and how to maintain that. And somebody calculated how many trees you need, and there are issues. So there are all these kinds of things that are considered under carbon removal. The other thing is radiative forcing geoengineering. Essentially, can I do something in the atmosphere or land so I reflect some of the sunlight coming back so that we get cooler? It sounds nice on a paper, but let's say I build something to cool my part of the country, then somebody else is getting screwed 2 miles down the road, right? So we don't know. There will be winners and there will be losers. That's what these guys say, which always is a bad word. When somebody says there will be winners and losers in what I do, you will be the loser and he will be the winner. So be careful about people who say that, right? But the idea here is that you can put sulfur in the stratosphere. There is way up in the atmosphere, and that reflects some of the sunlight. You can do various other things. So yesterday there was a paper saying there is some water vapor in the stratosphere about 15 kilometers and higher in the atmosphere. So he says, let us dry that. Take the water vapor out, and it will cool. There are lots of engineering, and there are a couple of people who actually tried to put sulfur in the stratosphere. But they shut them down right now, but there is no guarantee that some rich guy will just go think, I'll take some airplane and dump sulfur into the stratosphere. So we are trying to figure out what happens if somebody puts sulfur into the stratosphere. That forms sulfuric acid. Sulfuric acid is not good when it falls on your shirt. I don't know what happens if it falls on your head. So I worked in a sulfuric acid generation plant, and I had pulls at the end of the shift every day. So I'm pretty sure it's not a good thing. So next slide, please. So Puerto Rico and climate change. Let's now go to the thing that interests you most, as it should. We should be worried. I think the best way to think about climate change is how does this affect? Everything else is not very convincing. I can tell you, I can convince you that climate is going to be warmer by 4 degrees, 7 degrees, and all that. Okay, how do I get? The thing is, if I tell you your home is going to be warmer by 5 degrees, so you have to spend $1,000 more to cool your home in summer, because of climate change that you're not spending right now, or something like that, or you have to build an additional air conditioner. That makes more sense. So you're bringing the climate change message down to your house or to your community or your local. That's what Caucus is trying to do. They're trying to bring it down to a locality so that you can relate to that, right? All the stuff I said, you can relate to it, but not in a personal sense. So how do you personalize the context? So this is, Puerto Rico is a good example of how we are trying to understand it's still not there. I should confess that we are still, the models we are running, we improved them by factor of 9 the last few years. We need to go hundreds because the terrain in Puerto Rico is pretty complex. So let's go to the next slide. So why did we start doing Puerto Rico all of a sudden? There is a project called PR100. The idea is, after Marian, the Department of Energy has spent fairly large amount of money, I think it's about $20 million, trying to understand, can we make the energy transition in Puerto Rico so that 100% of the energy comes from renewable sources. So what are the scenarios for that? So they did a whole bunch of resource and potential demand projections. This is all done by Department of Energy. What can we do to EVs, energy efficiency, distributed PVs? So there is a lot of photovoltaics, basically solar energy in Puerto Rico already. Can we do some wind energy offshore or on land? So so what they do is they build a whole bunch of scenarios. So what happens if I do 80% of the energy from solar, 80% of the energy from wind? So and then do economic analysis and feasibility analysis. Can I actually do this, right? Can I make this 100% renewable? So they did lots of these studies, and they also did impacts and modeling analysis. The modeling analysis also took into consideration what would happen as climate is changing for available solar energy, available wind energy, available hydroelectric power. So we supported them with a lot of climate data sets, modeling. It's not great, but we are getting there. In the next iteration, we'll come down to hundreds of meters. Right now, we are still in kilometers, and the island is so complex that it's still not. So the outcome of this will be reports, visualizations, and outreach. So one of the things I would recommend is that people from here connect to DOE when this process is happening. They're actually trying to work with stakeholders on the island. There is ongoing meetings, they do meet, but people like your community here I can try to connect you with the right people. You should connect with them because you probably are more sophisticated in how these things work and how to message it right than whatever they are trying to do. So I think that would be a good opportunity for you. So the next slide, please. Maybe I'm going to. So you all know what Puerto Rico looks like, but in a climatological sense, the biggest thing is that the most populated densities are northern coast regions and lowlands along the southern coast. So this whole region up there is populated, and then you see on the southern islands. So the climate change, when you're thinking about is worries about them, and it's a tropical climate, as you can see. There are 3.2 million people right now. Next slide, please. So you have to keep eating, sorry. Yeah, okay, thank you. So PR is one of the major issues when you're talking about Puerto Rico to consider. So most of the risk from a weather or a climate event comes from extreme events. It rains every day, and it rains or not rains, you can manage it. But something like this, it changes huge impact on what. So that's why we are mostly focusing on risk from extreme events as a driver for these kinds of things. So if we look at that, in a climate model, this is a typical climate model. There is an international organization called IPCC, which does a assessment of how the climate is changing, what the current state of the science is. It's a UN organization. It's done every 4 years. They use climate models, and this is a typical grid size of a climate model. So entire Puerto Rico is essentially 1 point in that model. So there won't be any change from coast to coast, for example. So that's the problem when you're trying to, this obviously cannot capture a hurricane. It has no sense. Why, if you ask it, how many hurricanes will be there in 2050 as opposed to now, the answer is we don't know because we actually cannot resolve those hurricanes. We can tell you what kind of conditions can produce a hurricane and how they are changing. But can I actually calculate a hurricane in the model for 2050? Probably not. So to do that, you have to go to very high resolution, which is what we do. We go to pretty high resolutions to resolve some of these things. Next slide, please. So the change is already happening. I'm just showing what has happened in Puerto Rico from 1980 to 2019 compared to 1950 to 1970. So kind of like recent history, how much temperature has already changed. You can see that on the east and west, you're already seeing temperature changes up to 4.5 degrees Fahrenheit. So they have already changed. The change has already been happening. And this is happening all through the seasons, and you can see that it is more worse. Typically what happens is because the spring and fall seasons, winter seasons tend to be colder, you see bigger changes there. And you also see a lot of increase in summer. Next slide, please. So we have data. This is one of the problems with Puerto Rico, is there are not enough observations. If you look at that, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stations for the entire island. And this makes it difficult to both model and understand what is going on. Obviously, the one in the mountain doesn't see a lot of temperature change. This shows temperature maximum and minimum temperatures and means. But it trends over from 1920 to 20. But generally, you can see that all places it is increasing. Not so much on the side that is in the middle of the mountains, but other places you see. That's what this data is used to interpolate, and show the plot I showed before. That's why you see that blockiness. Next. This is, again, precipitation. How is the precipitation changing in Puerto Rico? So you can see that a lot of drying in summer, which probably when you get most of the rainfall, and then also in winter. These are important changes as far as in the mountains. Some places in the mountains you are seeing higher precipitation. Do I believe this? As I told you, there are only 5 stations, and this is an interpolation of those 5 stations. And it's taken with a grain of salt, but wherever there is station, you may be seeing actually precipitation decreasing, which is an interesting thing if you look at this plot. Next. So again, this is the stations, and from observations how the precipitation is changing. And you can see that some of the places it kind of decreases, some places it kind of, yeah, next. Yep, next. I don't want to send him home. Next slide, please. So seasonal surface temperature, so what would happen by mid-century? So we do calculations for mid-century. This is a model that looks at the island at about 4 kilometers per grid cell. It's this is the highest anyone has done for the island till now. So that is what looking at mid. Now I know that this is not enough. You actually have to go to hundreds of meters to actually capture the mountains, because the serious terrain in the middle of the island and how it goes on one side and the other side, you really have to capture the physics of how the mountains change the temperature. But even here, you can see that the temperatures we are predicting up to 4 degrees change. That is on top of the 4 degrees change I already showed you. This is by mid-century. So you're looking at big changes. Next slide. Yeah, this is the seasonal. That is the maximum temperature. This is the mean temperature. Again, you see somewhat similar behavior, and the mean temperature shows changes a lot more over the island than the maximum temperature. The maximum temperature seems to change mostly on the western end, and this and the mean temperatures are kind of all over the island. You can see locations where it is changing. Next slide, please. And this is the precipitation difference. Again, you can see it's a lot of the island, the entire region here. We are seeing a lower precipitation, which actually you see in the data too. So you're seeing something on top of the data. You'll see changes in precipitation. Some places it shows increase. Again, part of it could be how well we resolve the terrain. Yeah. Taking a while. So this is what the kind of central message is, that we are not just at the surface. Why is the precipitation changing at the surface? Is because the upper atmospheres over Puerto Rico is actually becoming warmer. When things become warmer, higher, clouds form because the air from the ocean goes up. So what you do is put a cap on the air moving up. It kind of blocks the movement of air upstairs. to take all the moisture up. So you see less of moisture in the air, the relative humidity is decreased in our simulations. That means that there is less water available in the air parcel to fall off below as a form of rain. So that's one of the things. We see increased seasonality in overall this kind of So this is looking at risk. So right now we are looking at how you form hurricanes. So the challenge with an extreme event is that they are extreme because they only happen once in a while. So if you want to model the risk from an extreme event, you need lots of them to do statistics so that you can do a risk and statistical possibilities and give you an uncertainty. So this is Maria, and these are resolutions of the model. Basically, how big a pixel in our model is. This is 27 kilometers. This is a 3-kilometer pixel. So think of this as an improving camera, better and better cameras. So that is about 1 kilometer. So right now we are even going below that. Once you go to that kind of resolution, then you can get both the wind speed and the precipitation current. Because extremes happen because not one extreme, that you just have more rain. It also happens because you have rain, you have wind, and lightning and all kinds of crazy stuff going on at the same time, and that increases the risk wherever you are. So we are doing this, and we actually have a catalog of 1,000 synthetic hurricanes we created. Synthetic in the sense that we know these kinds of conditions produce a hurricane. We do 1,000 hurricane simulations. So we can calculate what is a once in a 20-year event. The idea is that if I can tell somebody who's trying to plan to adapt to something, I can tell them what a once in a 50-year event looks like in the future as compared to now, what in the 25-year looks like in the future. So that's kind of a flood planning that people do. And this kind of risk estimates do help in terms of heat waves, floods, coastal floods, inland floods. So we do this risk mapping for most of North America. And we are trying to do it at a higher resolution as possible, doing as many calculations as we can so that we can get a good grip on that. So I think it's the last one. So thank you. I will keep plugging that.
How much time can we go? Because we also have the crocus Humboldt Park thing. Could we have like a few minutes of just question and answer just for Rob? Maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll go to the Humboldt Park.
Yeah, happy to answer any questions. Hopefully, yeah, right. Yeah.
I have a couple of questions, and the question is that climate change is multi-factor. We have multi-factor effects. One of my preoccupations is that we're talking about heat, but then we should be talking about flooding at the same time. We should be talking about all those aspects, and then how those aspects interact differently in the different community. And I think that for me is really important then, because underserved community, usually they will suffer the worst, and then we have to put there the fact then that the inequality, disparity in service for those communities when any type of event happens. And at least for me is that I feel that, it's great thing that you're doing all this information here in Humboldt Park, but I think then that we have to extend that to the south side and to the west, because then the type of impact then that it will have there will be impacted by water. And then, we have to be very concerned, for example, here in Chicago, because Chicago is in a swamp, and second, because our water would be, have the danger to be contaminated by sewer water. And I think that all these aspects that for me make me very, very concerned about everyone, but especially because what happened here in 2013 was then when there was the flood, downtown was fine, all those places then of wealth then were fine, but not those communities. And I think that we need to have a plan of advocacy in the context of what we do. And I think then that is the intent, because then the model represents that, but then we have to have people from those communities represented also in this type of dialogue to make it democratic. Thank you.
So, you basically described our Crocus project, which Max is going to explain in a while. So there is one aspect of this, like I'm worried about tomorrow's weather, and one aspect, how do I prepare for mid-century? So we are trying to bridge that gap, how we go from here. But if you're thinking of a neighborhood, we at this time don't have the capacity to model a block or a neighborhood at the scale on what would happen when weather changes and things like that. That's where we are trying to go. And you're right on point. I mean, for Puerto Rico, these folks have talked to communities there, but that's why I'm saying there was an environmental justice component to the slide I showed where they're doing PR 100. But it would be nice if people like this community gets involved in how the data is presented, because they've just done the research, they're trying to prepare the reports. So you should get connected with them.
Maybe one more question?
Well, as far as Puerto Rico is concerned, you mentioned like clouds, right? The formation of the clouds, and if they go higher. Well, when we were in Puerto Rico a couple of years ago, Ariel Lugo from the Forest Service, he explained to us that if that cloud cover goes higher, it's not going to hit the mountain, there's not going to be condensation. So the question is, what impact is this going to have on access to potable water for the population of Puerto Rico?
I think this is the kind of question we had, and that's why we want to go to a little higher resolution, because we want to understand how the mountain ecology is actually will get affected in terms of precipitation. This is very high resolution, but 4 kilometers is still a big domain to understand. And I think what you're expressing is exactly the reason we should be looking at a higher resolution, higher impact. Making more measurements is probably one of the things we should consider. Maybe you guys can talk to the Puerto Rican universities, and how do I better monitor the mountain ecology, right? It looks like there is one precipitation sensor there. For the entire mountain, it's not.
And we'll be talking to you much more. So we're going to go to the second part of the presentation. And that is that a small group of us at UIC, mostly some folks associated with Max and his particular lab there in Earth and Environmental Sciences, we've been coming up with some information with regards to tree canopies in Puerto Rico town, also heat, and we're trying to combine that with demographic information, things like property values, incomes, and so on. So one of the things that we have been very conscious about is that we know that the idea of Humboldt Park is defined in very many different kinds of ways. One definition of Humboldt Park is as the community area, and that's a kind of city designation. But inside the heads of many people who live in these community areas, something like Humboldt Park expands beyond just the city designated boundaries. And then over the last year or so, Matt Wilson, who will be speaking pretty soon. Where's Matt? Thank you. Back there. Matt is the one, the demographer, the geographer who put together the Puerto Rico Town Data Book for the Great Cities Institute. And he deserves an enormous... So we've been trying to combine environmental information, ecological information, with demographic information. And this is not done very much. But what you're going to see shortly is what happens when you combine all of those different variables. How are tree canopies distributed in different parts of the city? How are tree canopies distributed in different parts of Puerto Rico town? So we're trying to combine all of this information together, and that's what our presentation will be about today. Special thank you to Max. Max will be speaking later on to kind of like summarize everything. But if I can just say my deep appreciation, if there is a George Crabtree figure who still exists, in my opinion, it's in the embodiment of Max Berkelhammer, who will also be taking us on a trip to Puerto Rico, to different scientific stations for the study abroad, and we will be putting out sensors and so on and so forth, because we're trying to understand what's happening in Puerto Rico as well. But anyway, I think we owe a lot to Max. So anyway, let's move on. So who would be, Django, would you be starting? Django Lee has been putting together the heat maps, basically from satellite data. Natalie Love has been putting together tree canopy data. And Matt Wilson has been working mostly with the demographics, but we'll start with Django Lee.
Thank you. Hello everyone. So today I'm going to start with the heat in Chicago and Puerto Rico town. Okay, so first of all, let's show the screen. Yeah. So the first of all, what we did is we can measure temperature of Chicago and basically all over the earth from satellite. And I'm not going to go over like the technical details of it, of measuring here, but using the GROSS satellite and the EcoStress, which is on board the International Space Station, we can measure the land surface temperature from space. And you can see the map of heat in the figure right. You can see that you can even see the streets because it's very high resolution. And it's very high resolution temperature data that we have generated from the satellite and measurements from space. So what we know about Humboldt Park and heat, you can see the location of the park itself as blue and green stars there, and you can see the ethnic distribution of around Humboldt Park on the figure right. You can see the more red, the more Hispanic and Latino population are in the blocks. And if you see the figure on the left, you see the heat. And you can see that the blocks that are more occupied by Hispanic or Latino population face more higher land surface temperature. And you can even quantify this. So during the very extreme heat events, during the very hottest hours of the day, you can see that the Hispanic and Latino communities are about 3 degrees Celsius higher, under 3 degrees higher land surface temperature compared to the white population. And this is important because 3 degrees Celsius might not seem very high right now, but what this can exacerbate is that it can cause heat strokes or dehydration, and especially under very hot conditions, this can cause severe heart effect to the most vulnerable populations, especially to the older population. And we can expand this analysis to the entire US, actually. So if you look at how more vulnerable people are exposed to more higher temperature, you can see that in the 120 cities, largest cities in the US, 108 of them show the higher correlation, meaning that more vulnerable populations are more exposed to higher heat. So that's 90%. Who are the least, who are more vulnerable has the least resource to adapt or mitigate to the changing climate in the future. And I'll pass on to Natalie Cormier.
All right, hi everyone. My name is Natalie Love, and I am a scientist at UIC, and I'm particularly interested in urban trees and urban vegetation and how that affects people who live underneath their canopies. And what we're looking at here is a map of canopy cover in Chicago, and those are different census block groups in the city. And what we mean by canopy cover is just how many trees there are and how much of the area of communities are actually covered by canopy or shaded by canopy. And you can see that there's a lot of variation in the city in terms of canopy cover. There's places with very low canopy cover, and there's places with very high canopy cover. And that canopy cover is not equitably distributed in the city of Chicago. And Latino communities in Chicago experience much lower canopy cover than Black or white communities in Chicago. So 13% in Latino communities relative to about 20% in white communities. And if we actually zoom into Puerto Rico town and Humboldt Park area, you can see that there is also variation in the community as well. And East Humboldt Park area has higher canopy cover than West Humboldt Park area. And this is important because of what Jang Ho just talked about, right? This canopy cover has a big impact on the temperature that those communities experience. And in fact, if we look at the canopy cover figure, where these darker colors on the map represent higher levels of canopy cover, we see that they line up pretty well with the temperature map, right? Areas that have lower canopy cover are getting less shaded by trees, getting less cooling effect by trees, and that affects the land surface temperature that those communities actually experience. And in general, we see that places that have higher canopy cover tend to experience lower temperatures. And so there's a really close relationship, and we can actually put a number on that relationship. We can quantify how much canopy cover actually affects land surface temperature. And what we can do is look at the relationship between the two. And by quantifying that, we can see that about an 8% increase in canopy cover, which is about the gap between Latino and white communities in Chicago, would decrease the temperature about 0.5 degree on really, really hot or extreme temperature days. So we do see this relationship between canopy cover and temperature. And of course, increasing the canopy cover is not the only potential solution to cooling cities, but it is one of the solutions, and greening in general is one of the solutions. Although greening and gentrification are kind of tied together, right? We see this tension between the two of them, and I think one place where that's really obvious, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with, is along the 606 trail. And this is two images of the 606 kind of before and after that trail was developed. You can see that there was a lot of greening, a lot of green infrastructure was put in around that trail. And so solutions to kind of dealing with greening as a potential solution to climate change and this tension with gentrification, those solutions might have to be creative. And I know that the Puerto Rican Agenda has had a big say and has pushed some legislation to help gentrification be more difficult in these types of areas. So I know you guys have some experience with these creative solutions. Okay, so I'm going to pass it on to Matt, who's going to talk about some demographic data and some housing price data as well.
Thank you, and good morning. So if I were to try to expose environmental injustice in one table, I think this is a really important one. So this is speaking to demographic shifts that have occurred over the last 2 decades. And if we see the shift, so this is separating East Puerto Rico town and West Puerto Rico town, and this is a table that was included in the Puerto Rico town data book. We see that the share of white population has increased in East Puerto Rico town by 30.4%, and the population has more than doubled in that 20-year period, increased by 134%. while the Hispanic or Latino share declined by 1/3, and the absolute population number declined by 55%. So thinking of that relationship between tree canopy cover, temperature, and temperature exposure, right? We know that there's this vast difference between temperature and canopy cover between east and west. And this sort of, the way that this plays out, the sort of stratification that we see by demographics, creates this sort of environmental injustice. So this is sort of how we see the population and exposure to that. So I have some other kind of figures so keeping in mind exposure to temperature, sort of vulnerabilities. Rental housing is a really kind of interesting topic right now. With for sale housing being really expensive, interest rates being high, abilities for communities to have naturally occurring affordable housing is diminishing very quickly. And rental housing can exist sort of in two different domains. When you have stewards of rental housing that are committed to affordability, you have these circumstances where rental housing is actually great for neighborhood stability. But at the same time, if you have renters and they're renting from landlords in a private market, you're subjected to really quick increases in rent values. So looking at the share of renters in East and West Puerto Rico town, we see there's relatively high rates, but I think one thing that as we are sort of teasing out some of the relationships between neighborhood change and taking a long view at tree canopy cover and its change and demographics and change and trying to figure out the relationship, how rental housing plays into that. Is rental housing a source of stability, or is it a vulnerability that, when sort of left to its devices, subjects people to quick rent increases? So thinking more about kind of vulnerability and potential for displacement, so this is the share of renters that pay more than 30% of their income on rental costs. So interestingly, again, we see kind of this huge stratification between East and West Puerto Rico town. And I'll get to sort of property prices in a moment, but the more expensive part of East Puerto Rico town is actually more affordable to the renters that are currently there, right? So this is sort of, if we are to think of this as a sort of what base of the population potentially is at risk of displacement, looking at rental cost burden is really important. And so the rule of thumb is that you shouldn't pay more than 1/3 of your income on rental costs, but an extreme measure of cost burden is if you pay more than half of your income on rental costs. And again, we see this large divide between East and West Puerto Rico town, where we have East Puerto Rico town more expensive, but people are having an easier time paying for rent. Whereas in West Puerto Rico town, nearly 1/3 of the population is paying more than half of their income on rental costs. So looking at some of those same numbers, but for owners this time instead of renters, right? So again, keeping in the back of your mind the relationship between tree canopy cover and temperature, right? And the vulnerability of displacement that's occurring in the West is this additional hardship that individuals are having to face. So this is the proportion of owners paying more than 30% of their income on owner costs. So owning is far more expensive on West Puerto Rico town, despite the prices being a little lower, which I'll get to in a moment. And if we look at the extreme cost burden, so households that pay more than 50% of their household income, again, we see that same kind of similar stratification that's occurring between East and West. One, I think, of our next charges that we want to look into as a group is this relationship between greening. And we've seen the 606, and there is a real, I think, threat. When the 606 was announced, and one of my areas of research is looking at the establishment of large anchors and how real estate markets react to them. So, for example, when the Obama Library was announced, not when ground was broken, when the site was announced, you can see reactions to the property markets in Woodlawn and South Shore the following week. So it's very quick. So it's not like, when you have people speculating on land and you have a bunch of land and property sort of subjected to being in the marketplace, you have these really quick reactions. So we're trying to, I think one of our charges is to look at the relationship between greening and sort of green infrastructures and the 606 and seeing what the relationship is between property values. So there's again, as I mentioned, there's this sort of gradient effect where East Puerto Rico town is amongst so these are sorted into, each color represents 20% of the city's, so like, it's kind of hard to explain. It's to the 0 to 20th percentile of prices are in this lowest group, and so each bucket is going to contain 20% of the city's housing values. So we see now that actually East Puerto Rico town is now in that highest group of the city of Chicago. So it's amongst the highest valued real estate in all of the city of Chicago. It hasn't always been that way. So this is looking at a 3-year period of transactions between 2009 and 2011, and then between 2021 and 2023. So we see that there's more grouping towards the higher valued areas. So it shows that both east and west, property prices are appreciating in comparison to the city as a whole. So thinking about the sort of the relationship between temperature, tree canopy cover, demographic change, we see kind of this very dynamic and fluid situation unfolding with property values. So looking at the actual changes, so not the values, but how much they've changed over that same period. Again, this is grouped into each color is going to represent 20% of the city's overall changes. So amongst the highest value appreciation in the entire city of Chicago has occurred in East and West Puerto Rico town. So these are changes that are occurring in sales transactions. So in the East, we have up to nearly 30,000, all of them in sort of the 20,000s. And these aren't values, these are changes in value over that period. So huge amounts of appreciation happening. And to look at this in a more of a citywide context, what's interesting is along the lakefront. So this is changes in transaction values between 2009-2011 period, and then more recent to the 2021 to 2023 period. So it's grouping 3 years worth of transaction data in the before and after, or in the 2 time periods. So along the lakefront, not much appreciation. Housing values were already high in that base year. But we see this like large sort of like belt of property value appreciation that's occurring in the city, stretching all the way from Bridgeport and Pilsen, all the way up through West Town and East and West Puerto Rico Town, up through Logan Square and North Center. So I think something to keep in mind is sort of this frontier of value changes that's happening, and how we can think strategically about some of the amenities that we want to bring to address issues of climate and address demographic change, how those can be strategically targeted to not lead to further exacerbating some of the problems that we see in the housing and property market today. So really kind of trying to understand from a more holistic perspective that relationship between greening and temperature and changes over time is kind of one of our next charges that we're looking forward to looking at in our research and en route to finding some hopeful solutions around neighborhood stability and cultural preservation. So with that, I don't know, am I passing it to Matt? Thanks everyone.
Thanks, Matt. Firstly, I think Ralph incorrectly attributed me to a lot of this. And I just want to say thank you to Natalie, Django, and Matt, because they did all this work, and it was a lot. So I really appreciate their effort, and thank you all for your time today. And the only other thing we had to do, I know we're a little bit shy on time, is we wanted a little bit of time for discussion. And so as a professor, I put some prompts up here, but I can also just open it up to the floor if there